Good morning, everyone. We're just going to give people a minute or two to hop on, and then we will get started with the presentation. All right, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar, What is XDR and Why Does It Matter? I'm your host, Kate, and before I hand it over to our speaker, John, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items with you. So this webinar is being recorded, and we will make sure to get the recording out to you after the event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to send them in the chat or enter them into the Q&A. We will have time at the end of the webinar to go over any questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker, John Deninno. He's a sales engineering manager at Barracuda MSP. So John, take it away.
Thank you so much. As Kate mentioned, my name is John Deninno. I'm the sales engineering manager for Barracuda XDR. I've been in the cybersecurity space for about 4.5 years now. And prior to joining Barracuda, I worked in the MSP space, specializing in SIEM and SOC. So we're going to jump right into it. What is XDR? So Extended Detection and Response, or XDR, collects and correlates data across multiple security layers like email, endpoint, network, and cloud. So let's take a look at how we got here and the various acronyms that we often hear. So many of you have maybe heard of EDR and MDR, right? So at a high level, EDR, or endpoint detection and response, is going to solely focus on the endpoints and endpoint threats. It's going to give you the ability to block and quarantine malware. And it also provides somewhat of an ability to investigate threats, but focused on that endpoint level. After that, we had Managed Detection and Response, or MDR. So this is sort of an evolution of EDR. It's going to add in that vendor that provides detection and response capabilities. It might provide some SOC or security operations services to help triage those security threats. And it might implement those security tools such as SIEM, or Security Information and Events Management, as well as SOAR, or Security Orchestration and Automated Response. Finally, we've made our way over to XDR, or Extended Detection and Response. So no longer are we focusing solely on the endpoint or one specific technology. We're really providing that visibility across all attack vectors. Like I mentioned before, that's going to be servers, endpoint, email, network, cloud, bringing all of these together. Okay. It's also going to provide a two-way integration with the security tools that you're collecting all of this information from, and that to that XDR platform. So how does XDR work? Again, we're gaining that extended visibility. We're going to want to tap into as many different data sources as possible. That way we can get as many puzzle pieces and really get the big picture of what's going on in a particular environment. So you can see here, again, we're going to tap into authentication activity, cloud, critical servers, email logs, right? One of the #1 attack vectors is going to be email. So having that information is critical as well. Not to mention endpoint, with the prevalence of things like ransomware, devastating. Having that not only a good advanced endpoint protection in place, or next generation endpoint protection in place, but collecting that information and correlating with everything else is also key there as well. not to mention network activity, right? Attackers moving throughout a network is very common, pivoting to other resources in that environment. So having visibility there is also key, as well as SaaS. So there's a big move to software as a service, no longer hosting it yourself, but having it hosted by somebody else. So that's the extended visibility. Now we have to have the detection. So something in place to be able to monitor all these different vectors and provide detection on attacks like account takeovers or denial of service, sometimes referred to as DOS. Privilege escalations, right? Again, I mentioned before, attackers, once they get in, they're going to want to move their way throughout a network and maybe escalate those privileges, work up to higher privileged accounts or higher privileged machines. Business email compromise. This is huge. Again, email is a very common attack vector because end users are the weakest link, and this is where business email compromise comes into play. Zero-day attacks, right? These are the types of attacks that are not known yet to those cybersecurity professionals in that industry. They're brand new. There's no signatures for it. It's not really known except to those maybe attackers. And that kind of goes hand in hand with malware and ransomware. A lot of zero-day attacks do kind of go hand in hand with new types of malware, new types of ransomware that are out there. And then finally, we have the response aspect. So we're collecting all of that information from all of those vectors. We're detecting this malicious or suspicious activity. And then the response part. So, okay, we've detected that. What can be done, right? If it's for that account takeover, maybe it's disabling that account or resetting that password. Maybe there's a denial of service and we need to block that IP address. If it's malware or ransomware, maybe it's quarantining a host. When it comes to email, maybe it's blocking those messages. Tons and tons of different response aspects that can be made with the different detections. Then we get over to the benefits of XDR. So the cybersecurity landscape has seen quite the evolution over the past 2 decades. We have more devices connected to the internet with IoT, and more data has been created than ever before. Attackers are getting more sophisticated, and now we're dealing with even government-backed nation-state actors. And there's no longer a perimeter. So unlike an organization's on-premise infrastructure, their cloud-based deployments are outside the network perimeter and are directly accessible from the public internet. And attacks are no longer just an inconvenience. With things like ransomware, they can be devastating, right? Encrypting all of that data. And if there's no backup in place or some way to detect that and respond to that, these can have devastating effects and sometimes even put organizations out of business. So it's growing increasingly challenging to protect organizations as the threat landscape is constantly expanding. So it's literally a game of security whack-a-mole, if you will. So for every threat patched or every threat that's blocked, there seems to be more that pop up in its place. And this is because attackers are more sophisticated now, and they're growing in numbers and effectiveness every day, not to mention the shortage of cybersecurity talent out there. So over the last 12 months, 74% of organizations suffered a ransomware attack at least once. And ransomware attacks often begin as that email attack, but quickly pervade through other parts of the network. And it can easily lead to a full data loss in absence of some of those comprehensive plans that have disaster recovery and backup as a final fail-safe. And now we also have many different email threat types. So now there's actually 13 distinct and increasingly complex email threat types. Many actors or bad actors have pivoted to impersonation or social engineering attacks that easily bypass these gateways in order to obtain information like credentials, right? To maybe do that account compromise or even manipulate the end user. Of course, organizations are moving droves into Microsoft 365, right? We mentioned the adoption of SaaS or software as a service. And of course, this creates new security implications as well. Unfortunately, hackers have also figured out how to attack at a scale that is leveraging bots. And during the last 12 months, 81% of organizations experience a network security breach. Again, that goes back to why gaining that visibility on the network is super important. Okay, so a clear-cut list of those benefits of XDR to MSPs or managed service providers specifically. It provides a holistic managed security service offering that protects major attack vectors such as endpoint, email, cloud, network, and server. You're going to gain full visibility into those environments, reduce alert fatigue, and deliver best-in-breed security services. So with that, you're delivering security services with ease via MSP-centric cloud-native MSP platforms that integrate with existing technology. And that's key. Having an open XDR platform that's going to integrate with that technology that's already in place to reduce that friction is key. Monthly costs that align with MSPs' contracts with customers. So MSPs can build the price to customers and receive a predictable margin on the services. Finally, you're able to demonstrate value through those services, through brandable reports within our dashboard. So what do attackers do? How do hackers hack? It starts off by targeting a user. And this is most commonly, as we mentioned before, done via email. Once a user clicks an email from an attacker, they're going to gain access to the network or cloud service. And we basically call this a foothold. A hacker is then going to try and move around and find some other things, right? They might pivot to another endpoint or a server. And they're going to do something that's going to give them sort of a backdoor back into the network, right? Or maybe that command and control communication that goes back to that attacker that can control this endpoint and move throughout the network. They'll then look for things of value to extract, right? So they might increase their privileges, take over another identity, and find that sensitive information or anything of value to extract. And then they'll pull that out of the network and usually sell that on the dark web. So I want you to keep this slide in mind when we go ahead and hop over to our live demonstration, because this is the exact pattern that we're going to follow here. So go ahead and bring this up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to have an entire environment. And first, we're going to start out with enumeration. And this is sort of a probe into the environment to find things like open ports, for example. So I'll hop over to a virtual machine here. And I'm going to do that enumeration by doing sort of a scan of this particular domain. And I do have an IP address, and I can actually see that this has an SSH port that is open, so port 22. So this is a potential vulnerability here because this is not something that should be open to the public internet. Okay, so we'll hop back over here. And now we're going to do a brute force attack on that particular IP address. So I'm going to try multiple different passwords as well as usernames. And this should eventually give us a username and password that we can then go ahead and log into. All right, so there we go. That .138 address did return a username of admin and a password as admin123. Okay, so we have that there. So we did a brute force attack to find the credentials of this particular domain. So with that information, I'll then go ahead and SSH because I know the SSH port is open on this, and I'll try and log in. Of course, because I did the brute force, I do have the username and password. And now upon logging in, I can actually see that this is a FortiGate device. So this is a firewall. And now I'm going to run some commands here to get the interfaces on this firewall device. So I can see 2 ports are up. One is most likely going to be for the LAN, while the other is for the WAN connection. So internal and external. And then I'll run an ARP command here to find the devices that are actually connected to this firewall. So again, because of this brute force, because of that open port, I have full access to this device, and now I can do more reconnaissance as the attacker. So again, I see a few devices here, 4 of them to be exact. And I'll run another command here, and I'm going to get the session list. So I'm going to see all of the connections that are happening on this particular firewall device. And I'm looking for something in particular here. So yeah, this one right here, this is usually an IP that Microsoft uses, and we can actually paste that IP into a quick tool that's going to look it up for us. And yeah, so that is correct. So this is actually Microsoft Corporation. Looks like it's on Azure here. So again, this is more information that's building up. So I found the particular victim in that session list that I just pulled up, and I know that they're connecting to Microsoft. So from there, I'll get back into that firewall. Okay. So from there, now I'm going to do some configuration changes. So on the firewall, but I want to get to a machine on this particular network. So how I'm going to do that is change the configuration on this firewall to enable RDP, or Remote Desktop Protocol. And that's done over port 3389. So I'll head back up to the top here. Right, so just to quickly run through this, you can see I've set this where any IP coming from the outside, again, the outside public internet, inbound, it's going to map that IP over to this .50 address. And I know based on that list that I pulled up, the ARP list, that this is a machine that's on the network. Okay, and we can see port forwarding is enabled. So again, anybody coming in this case, me, the attacker, coming into the environment, it's going to throw that port 3389 or RDP over to this .50 address machine. Okay, so we got that port forwarding over RDP configured on there. And now I'm going to pull up a tool to gain the credentials of that particular machine. So I could easily brute force that password, but I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate a few different techniques that attackers might use to gain this information. In this case, I'm going to do a phishing attack. Again, very common. And you can see this particular tool allows me to easily craft brand impersonation web pages and links for a lot of the popular services out there, whether it's Facebook, PayPal, Netflix. In this case, I know this user is using Office 365 based off of that IP address. So I'm going to select option 4 from Microsoft. And then I've already pre-crafted an email here on the right side of the screen. So again, I'm making this look like it's coming from Microsoft. I'm going to take this phishing link that was generated by the tool, and I'm going to paste this into the email over this verify your identity text to kind of hide what the true link is. And you can see the message, I've created a sense of urgency. This is another thing that attackers like to do, is sort of scare the end user into acting very quickly and not really think about what they're doing. So you can see it says, we think someone's accessed your Microsoft account. When this happens, we need you to verify your identity. Again, this is a fake email from Microsoft that we're sending. So I'm going to put in the victim's email address in here, and I'm going to go ahead and send this off. Now, this particular organization does have a gateway in place, specifically Barracuda Email Gateway Defense. So if we just refresh this, we can actually see the message was blocked. So this is good, right? This is what we want to happen. But to continue with the demonstration here, I'm going to go ahead and just manually allow this email through. So we'll do a UI delivery on this. And then we'll hop over to what the victim is going to see, right? So again, let's say that the attacker did get around the email protection solution. You can see here, the email did make it to the inbox. And, you know, as an end user, it looks kind of convincing to me. It says Microsoft, it's from Microsoft Verify. It has Microsoft's logo in there, and they say it's the Microsoft account team. So looks pretty legitimate. So I'll go ahead and play along here and click that phishing link. And the end user is going to want to sign in to fix this issue, right? So they'll put in their username and password. But if we hop back over to the view of the attacker, of course, it was a fake email. And I was successfully able to capture not only the username, but that password as well. So now I'm armed with even more information. We've sent that phishing email and have gained the credentials. We don't need this anymore, so we'll just close out of these. And now I'm going to pull up this text document here and just paste in the information that I got. So that's going to be the password, and I'll also put in the username. And what this command is going to do is allow me to connect over RDP, or Remote Desktop Protocol. So I'll copy that over here to my terminal window. And again, this is going to the IP address of the firewall, but because we set up that port forwarding, it's going to send over to that .50 address, which is a machine on the network. And you can see here, yep. So we're connecting to Adam Jones's PC, again, the user that we just sent that phishing email to and got the credentials to, which is why I'm able to connect here. Okay, so we now have, through the firewall, through the internet, RDP access to this particular machine. All right, so as the attacker, I'm going to poke around here to see if I can find any information here. And this does look very appealing to me. So I find a bunch of financial details for some US folks and some EMEA folks here. Looks like credit card information. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a terminal on this machine here. And I'm going to run a curl command, and I'm going to post this. So basically going to take the data that's on this machine and extract it outside of the environment. And I'm going to specify it's the TXT document of the financial details. And I'm going to send this, again, I'm doing a post. So I'm going to do this over a webhook. So I'm going to go ahead, just use this tool here and pop this in. Okay, so we'll curl this and post the data to that webhook. That looks like it was successful. So let's just hop back over to this page here. And yeah, you could see it did post. And if we scroll down a little bit here, you can actually see the raw content. So without even having to use any sort of cloud storage and upload these documents, I was able to do it all just via the command line. So we can see all the financial details there. Okay. So we've successfully done the data exfiltration. I'll hop back over to the RDP machine. I'll just pop into full screen here for a second. And I'll bring up my command prompt again. So I'm going to just get a couple more tools installed on this machine that an attacker might use, because remember, thinking back to that slide we showed you before, attackers like to move throughout the network. They'll get initial access to one machine, but to me, this looks like a regular user machine. So I'm going to want to make my way up to maybe a domain controller or a higher level server, for example. In order to do that, I'm going to download a brute forcing tool here. Okay, that looks good. Okay, great. So we're all set up now. I have the tools necessary. I'll just change directories real quick. And okay, so what I'm going to do here is based off of the ARP that I was using before, or the information that I gained before, I kind of have an idea of what the domain controller is. So I'm going to go ahead and do another brute force attack. Again, because I'm on just a regular user's system. So I'm going to try and gain admin access to that domain controller server. So I'll just set the parameters correctly here. And you can see I'm trying a whole bunch of usernames and passwords here. So I'm trying the administrator account. And you could see there a whole bunch of different passwords, of course, running through all of the commons one there. All right, so it looks like I did find one. One was successful. And if I look at the results file here, yeah, so I do have the administrator username also linked up to the password there. Okay, great. So I have even more info, and I've done the brute force for RDPing over to the server now. So from there, I'll open up, this time I'll open up a PowerShell. Because for this, I'm going to want to use PS session. And this is going to allow me to head over or move laterally over to, from this system, over to the, in this case, domain controller. I'm going to log in as the administrator. Of course, I have the password from that brute force attack. Okay, and looks like I'm connected. So I'm in the documents directory here. I'm just going to go ahead and paste in some commands here. What I'm doing here is adding a new user, and I'm also setting this password to never expire. Very common thing that attackers do when they get access to the system. They may disable the legitimate administrators and create new accounts and add those accounts over to the admin group. So we'll do that as well. So we'll just go ahead and finish up creating this user. I have to enter in a password. Okay, so that new user is in the system. And then, as I said, we'll go ahead and add this new user to the domain admin group. So I have full privilege, full access to this. And I'll also add it to the remote desktop user group in case I want to come back and remote in later. Okay, I think we're good there. So we've created the user and we've done a privilege escalation. So we have that new user and it is added to the domain admin group. Okay. And we'll do one more attack here. I'm going to go ahead and download some ransomware, right? Because attackers just love ransomware. It's very prevalent today. And this is what's really going to seal the deal here. So not only am I going to take that information out of the network and sell it on the dark web, but now I'm going to try and get some Bitcoin from this user as well. So you can see here, we've successfully encrypted the entire system, and we leave a ransom note that they must pay the Bitcoin, unless they're not going to get their data back. So we've released the ransomware, and that also triggered some command and control communication that went back to the attacker. So after all of this, we have access. We've created some backdoors. We've taken the data, not only outside, siphoning it outside of the environment, but we've held the data here for ransom. And that's what we've done. We've released the ransom there. Of course, we've had Barracuda XDR installed on this environment the entire time. So we were actually able to see all of this happening in near real time. So let's go ahead and take a look. So these are all of the tickets that would have been sent to this particular partner. And we could see every step of the way, these alerts come through. So for this, we started off with that brute force authentication attempt on the firewall. And you can see here, I do have an alert for that. It gives me all the details, like what the threat is. any IP addresses that I should know about, right? So we can see some familiar IP addresses like the .137 as well as the .253 address. Okay, we could see good information in here like the critical recommended actions. So exactly what should I do in this particular situation for this alert that I received, as well as threat prevention. So it happens, let's clean it up, let's respond to the incident, and then put measures in place so that this does not happen again. Okay, so after that FortiGate brute force attack, there was then the phishing email that I sent. You can see here we have an alert for that as well. So phishing email that was blocked or deferred. So we have that info here. And of course, when talking about XDR, we have to remember the R part of that, or the response. And you could do that from here. So whether it's clicking that block IP button up at the top, or maybe responding to this email incident. So you can see here, I have plenty of actions to take on this email. I can delete the email from the user's inbox. I can send an alerts to the security team. I could also enable continuous remediation. So I've caught this one, but is the attacker going to go and try and send this email to other people in my organization? Well, I can do that all from this dashboard. Okay, again, we have all of the recommended actions and details there. So after the email, we then got access to the domain controller, and I set up a new user. And of course, I added that user to the domain admin group. You can see this is a high impact. So we do categorize everything in levels as low, medium, and high. After that, we added the user to the remote desktop user group. So if I wanted to come back later, I could easily do that. And then we also released the ransomware. So you can see here, I did have Sentinel-1 installed on this machine. Now, in normal circumstances, Sentinel-1 is a great endpoint protection and would have stopped that ransomware. In this case, for the demonstration purposes, I did put it in detect-only mode to demonstrate the visibility on this. So we could see here that Sentinel-1 detected a new threat, but it was not mitigated. Again, this is crucial information that you would want to know about right away, which is why we have these alerts. Okay, we could see things like the hash value of the particular file, as well as the path in which it executed. Okay. And then finally, because of that ransomware, it did reach out over the Tor network. So over the network, we were able to see Tor activity to the internet. Again, important information like IP addresses. All right. So what you saw there at the end was Barracuda XDR. So Barracuda Extended Detection and Response provides extended visibility, analysis, and response across networks and clouds, in addition to apps and endpoints. So you can see here multiple different sections of this, starting with network security. So Barracuda XDR Network Security is a monitoring service that provides IDS, or intrusion detection capabilities. It protects firewalls and other network devices. Suspected threats are correlated for analysis using the XDR's analytics platform, threat intelligence, and of course, the Security Operations Center. You have cloud security. So this is going to monitor for malicious activity in the cloud to find identity, asset, and privilege risks, such as unauthorized access to mailboxes, admin changes in the environment, impossible logins, and brute force attacks. Next, we have server security. So this is going to collect, aggregate, and normalize data across critical Windows and Linux servers within the network. So we're going to identify potential risk using that analytics platform again, and we're going to be looking for things like password spray attacks, brute force attacks, privilege escalations, like we just saw in the demo, new users being created. Of course, email, large attack vector there. This is a comprehensive email protection solution that includes gateway security, looking for account compromises, and much more. And then ending off with endpoint security. So before that we released that ransomware, having a good endpoint protection solution in place that's going to unify and extend detection and response capabilities to laptops, desktops, and servers within the network, and protecting them against malware like ransomware is key. Of course, all of this is backed by the 24/7, 365 Security Operations Center. So Barracuda XDR sets itself apart by offering one of the most mature SOC services in this space. The team is divided into 4 divisions: blue, green, purple, and red. You can see sort of the first line of defense is going to be those cybersecurity analysts. Up from there, we have a dedicated team of endpoint engineers that are going to focus, of course, on endpoints and endpoint threats. Next up, we have that level 3 or purple team. These are the senior cybersecurity analysts who work very closely with the blue team in improving efficiency. And then finally, we have the red team. And these are the senior incident response and attack analysts. And this is the team who's going to be on offensive security, learning the tactics, techniques, and procedures that attackers are using today, and building these detections that we saw during this demonstration today. Next steps. So if this webinar leaves you wanting more, I would highly suggest that you download our free ebook to learn more about the opportunities that exist for MSPs to offer security services, how to improve your MSP business towards offering managed security services, as well as the different types of services you can offer under managed security umbrella. Additionally, you can also reach out to us at sales@barracudamsp.com. And I think now we'll go ahead and kick it back over to Kate.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for going through all that great information and through the live demo. Before we move on to the Q&A, we do have a quick survey that we would like you to respond to. It'll ask if you want to be registered for some of our upcoming webinars, including one on ransomware and one about an MSP's guide to understanding the switcher's buyer's journey. It'll also ask if you want to be subscribed to the Smarter MSP blog. So we appreciate all of your answers on that. And now just moving on to the Q&A portion. So the first question that came in was, are there any remediation steps available with Barracuda's XDR service? John,
yes.
Would you be able? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question. So there is. So of course, we have our 24/7, 365 Security Operations Center to not only walk through partners through the remediation process, but in the alert, and we had taken a look at a few of those in the demonstration. There was that portion that details the remediation guidelines, and that will be custom for the alert that comes through. So for example, Office 365, we detect a foreign login. It's going to go ahead and detail those steps, like maybe resetting that password or kicking out or ending all of those sessions, or suspending those sessions, I should say. And then, of course, the guidelines or recommendations for going forward. So maybe we investigate that and find out it was a weak password, or the user clicked a phishing link and, gave up their credentials to the attacker, like we saw in the demonstration today. So that alert that gets sent out to our partners is going to detail everything clearly, including those remediation guidelines.
All right, great. Thank you. So another question is, how are the incident responses sent to MSPs?
Yeah, another good question there. So multiple different channels in which we can send those. One of them is the integration with PSA systems or ticketing systems like ConnectWise, ServiceNow, Autotask. Those can get sent straight into there. We also send via email. You can view them in the portal like we showed during the demonstration. And then, of course, we do offer phone calls as well. Those are typically for those high-level alerts that we do detect.
Great, thank you. We also have a couple of questions surrounding the integrations. Specifically, does Barracuda integrate with PSA tool like CW to update agreements? Could you go over that?
So that's a very good question. So we do integrate with those PSA systems. As of today, it is primarily for the notification aspect. So again, detecting that threat, investigating it, providing that alert. That alert will go to the PSA system if you would like. And that's where you can update the SOC, communicate with the SOC. And if you decide to close it out, it's remediated. If you close it in your PSA system, it'll close on our system. In terms of the agreements, I'm guessing billing and things like that, that is something that we're looking into, but not available as of today.
Okay, great. I am also sending the website with our integrations in the chat.
Yep.
Another question is the managed endpoint with remediations included 24/7?
Yes. So the great thing about this is the fact that there's, the SOC comes with everything, right? So if you think back to those spokes on the wheel, email, cloud, endpoints, all of that comes backed by our 24/7, 365 Security Operations Center. So when you take a look at the managed endpoint offering, yes, that is included in there.
Okay, awesome. So if we are running up on time, so if anyone else asks any questions, we will have someone from our team reach out to you and be able to answer any of those questions. But thank you again, John, for providing all the information, and thanks to everyone for attending the webinar. And yep, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.